Hi guys, and welcome to U-Wrench. Today we're going to be doing a radiator pressure test using this kit here. This is especially useful if you suspect that you've got a leak somewhere in your coolant system. This is an ideal place to start, and these kits aren't very expensive. So let's take a look in more detail. So this is the kit we're going to be using today for the sake of this video. This is an inexpensive DIY kit. You can buy these for around the $50 mark on eBay or Amazon, which is about £35, €40, somewhere in that kind of price range. So these are an ideal kind of a DIY solution for doing this. You can spend hundreds on buying very posh kits. So they've got loads of adapters, more adapters than you can ever need, but a cheap kit like this will do the vast majority of the cars. So these are actually fairly simple. They come with a range of adapters, so these either screw or clip onto the ends or onto the top of your radiator, where your radiator cap normally goes. And what you want to do is ensure that the kit that you buy comes with a cap that is going to be suitable for your car. Now in this particular kit, we're working on a Dodge Grand Caravan today, and quite surprisingly this kit doesn't actually include an adapter that will fit that car. However, they do come with these this little multi-adapter right here, which you couple up with these kind of plungers here at the back. They come in three different sizes, as you can see right there. So this is the solution that we're going to be working with today, which is kind of the hardest solution. So we're going to be showing you your kind of worst case scenario. Hopefully for your particular car you'll just be able to pull one of these straight out of the box and screw it right on, and away you go. But do bear that in mind, we're going to be doing the slightly harder work around today. Now the reason why you might not spot a leak from your radiator is because it might not leak when the system's not under pressure. So you might leave your car on the drive overnight and come back and there's no drips whatsoever. Take it for a drive and you've lost half your coolant. That's because the system is pressurised, and that leak might not become apparent until the pressure is actually built up in the system. One very important thing to realise, as you can see on this particular one, the radiator caps, they tend to have a PSI pressure rating. You see this one says 16 PSI. That's a very common, 15-16 tends to be the most common for these types of cars, but you do want to check that, because when we do the pressure test you want to make sure that you're testing not beyond the limitations of the cap, and there's a good reason for that. So basically the importance of the radiator cap is the way that the coolant kind of travels around the cooling system of the car. It will leave the radiator from the bottom hose, it will travel around the engine, and via the water pump will eventually come out to the thermostat, which you can just see down there. It's got a little cross on top of it. The thermostat in turn connects to this chunky radiator hose, which we can see right here, comes up all the way across and goes into the top corner of the radiator right there. So that's returning the coolant back into the radiator. However, if there's a build-up of pressure in the radiator due to heat, then sometimes this coolant can't be circulated back into the radiator, and that's where this little arrangement comes into play. So what will happen if there's a build-up in pressure in the system? This cap's actually got a pressure relief built into it, which is why it says 16 psi. So as soon as it hits 16 psi, air will slowly start to seep out of this. It's actually got a, if you look at the cap itself, it's actually got like a little spring-loaded pressure relief valve inside it. And what will happen is that will slowly release pressure, and that will allow the coolant to come up, and it will actually come out through this hose on the side, which, as you can see, leads back down to your coolant reservoir, and that kind of keeps the whole thing circulating. So when you do your pressure test, you've got to make sure that you do not exceed the pressure that the cap is rated for, because the radiator won't be, you know, if you've got it rated at 16 psi and you go and bang 45 psi through it, you're going to start damaging other components. The system's only designed to take 16 psi, at which time this valve should open up and release the pressure. So that's the maximum pressure that should be in the radiator at any one time. And here's the pump that comes with the system. So what we're going to do in a moment, we're going to use this pump to put a pressure into the system, and on the end of it you'll see we've got a quick release valve that will release pressure. And most importantly, once you've got your cap in place, this actually snaps onto the end of it, like so, and then you're going to pump the pressure into the system until you get to We're going to keep it under 16 psi, which you can see where the blue turns to the red. The instruction manual for this particular set recommends you go to about 13 psi, which is probably somewhere about right. Remember, you want to keep under 16. So you screw that on, clip that on and put the pressure on. As I said, we're going to be doing it with the little workaround tool because this particular set won't fit a Dodge Grand Caravan, so I'll show you how to fit this on next. So get rid of your radiator cap. A lot of caps you need to undo them and then press them to undo them further. So you'll kind of undo it and it won't come off, press it down again, twist it even further, and then the whole thing should lift off like so. Now, as we're using the little workaround tool today, because we don't have a cap that will fit directly on here, got to find the correct size plunger that's just going to stop any air entering the system, and on this particular car that's going to be the medium size. So just grab this little tool, and I'm just going to spin this up inside like so, making sure that the arms can still open. That's perfect. And we've got two little lips on either side here, so what we're going to do is going to lift these little arms so they fit on either side, and then we're going to push the plunger down. When you do this, because they're only kind of lightly spring loaded until you get it under tension, it's a good idea to kind of squeeze the bottoms of the two arms to stop them moving out of place. So if you kind of squeeze those where you want them and then work the plunger into place. So now we'll twist the plunger down until we make contact, like so. And then, whilst keeping the pressure on the sides, we'll use the little kind of a dial on top just to get that nicely tightened up. It doesn't need to be crazy tight, because if you over tighten it, it's likely to pop off, but it needs to be tight enough to create a vacuum. Once it's kind of under pressure, it will kind of suck itself closed, if that makes any sense. So that's on there, fairly sturdy. Now we're going to attach this next, but what you want to do before you do this is make sure that you've got a drip tray ready under the car to catch any coolant that does leak if you do have a leak in the system. So obviously it's going to go all over the floor, so make sure you've got the drip tray at the ready before you apply pressure. So now carefully just push the pump onto the tool like so. And so now we'll just take him up till we get to about 13 psi. If you do find you get an immediate air leak, do check the plunger that you've just screwed down, because if that's not seated correctly, obviously you'll hear a hissing noise coming from that part of the assembly. But assuming that's okay, we're just going to keep pumping this up, and just under 10, I'm going to take this up to 13. So here we are at 13 psi, and as you can see, we absolutely, as suspected, have a leak on this radiator. So this is an ideal kind of example of the pressure test being successful, if you like. Successful in that it's proved that we do have a leak. Not that that's particularly good news, but at least we can go ahead and take the appropriate steps to get the car repaired. Okay. So I had this up to 13, but as we know, we've got the leak, so obviously the pressure's slowly dropping. So once you finish your test, all you want to do is press the little pressure relief valve on top. That will drop this gauge back down to 0. And there we go. And then we can just disassemble this and break this down, and we're away. So that is how you test your radiator for leaks using one of the cheap, inexpensive DIY radiator leak test kits. So thank you very much for watching. See you on the next video.